Nestled in the cradle of towering mountains and blanketed by an endless sky, the village of Kivili thrived in its own world of colors, sounds, and stories. The villagers were spirited people who lived in harmony with nature, celebrating life with festivals that echoed the rhythm of their hearts. Every corner of Kivili resonated with laughter, music, and the rich aroma of spices wafting from cooking fires. Among this vibrant tapestry lived Adia, the eldest daughter of Chief Tembo and his wife, Nia. Adia had a quiet strength about her, a dignity that often went unnoticed by those around her. Her life, however, was overshadowed by the sharp tongues and critical eyes of the villagers. Unlike her younger sister slim, graceful, and admired for their beauty, Adia's full-figured frame became the target of cruel jokes and thoughtless laughter. "She's as big as the grain silo," one villager would cackle. "If only she could dance as lightly as her sisters," another would sneer. These words stung Adia deeply, leaving invisible scars. She began to believe that her worth was tied to her appearance, and since the village deemed her unworthy, she retreated into herself. Her days were spent helping her family grinding millet, fetching water, and weaving baskets, but her heart yearned for something more. A hidden talent. Unbeknownst to the villagers, Adia possessed a secret, a gift that filled the void their words left behind. Each night, as the moon rose high and silver light bathed the valley, Adia would steal away to the hills just beyond Kivili. There, surrounded by the whispers of the wind and the rustling of leaves, she would dance. Her movements were fluid, her body swaying with an elegance that defied the villagers' cruel remarks. She would hum melodies she composed in her mind, each note harmonizing with the soft murmurs of the night. In those stolen moments, she felt a freedom that the world seemed determined to deny her. One evening, as Adia danced beneath the canopy of stars, she was startled by the sound of a flute. The melody was soft, almost timid, as though it sought permission to join her song. She turned sharply, her breath catching in her throat. At the edge of the clearing stood a man, his face partly hidden in the shadows. The stranger's melody. "I'm sorry to intrude," the man said, lowering his flute. His voice was warm, like sunlight breaking through morning mist. "Your dance called to me." Adia hesitated, her heart pounding. "Who are you?" she asked, wary but curious. "My name is Kofi," he said with a slight bow. "I am a wandering musician, and I could not resist the beauty of your song." Adia's cheeks flushed. "I'm no musician," she murmured, her gaze dropping to the ground. "I just dance to forget." Kofi stepped closer, his flute resting at his side. "Then you are a greater musician than most. Music and dance are born from the heart, and your heart speaks volumes." Adia's walls began to crumble under Kofi's sincerity. She had grown so accustomed to ridicule that his kindness felt almost foreign. "Why are you here?" she asked. "I travel where the wind takes me," Kofi replied. "But perhaps, tonight, it brought me here for a reason." A friendship blossoms. From that night on, Kofi became a regular presence in Adia's secret world. Each evening, he would bring his flute, and together they would create something magical. His music was the perfect complement to her dance, weaving a tapestry of sound and movement that seemed to make the very stars dance with them. In Kofi's company, Adia felt seen not for her appearance, but for her spirit. He never mentioned her size or the cruel words of the villagers. Instead, he spoke of her grace, her strength, and the way her dance seemed to hold the power of the earth itself. "You're like the river," Kofi told her one night as they sat beneath a baobab tree. "Steady and strong, carving your path despite the rocks that stand in your way." Adia's heart swelled at his words, but a part of her remained guarded. The world outside their secret clearing was harsh, and she feared that Kofi's kindness was a fragile dream that would shatter upon waking. A newfound hope. For the first time in years, Adia began to see herself through a different lens. She no longer felt like the unwanted daughter, the village's object of scorn. With Kofi by her side, she discovered a joy she had long buried, a joy that made her days brighter and her nights filled with wonder. But as their bond deepened, so did her fears. What if Kofi, like the villagers, eventually judged her for her appearance? What if this fragile happiness was merely an illusion? The sun rose over Kivoli, casting long shadows that danced on the village walls. Adia's days now carried a peculiar rhythm. The laughter that had once been directed at her had transformed into admiration. Villagers who had scorned her for her appearance now sought her company, their words dripping with flattery. "Adia, you are radiant," said one of the elder women as she passed by the marketplace. "It's as though the drought carved you into a goddess." Adia smiled politely, but inside, her heart felt heavy. While the villagers' newfound adoration filled a void she hadn't known was so deep, it also left her uneasy. Their kindness felt conditional, tethered to the changes in her body rather than her spirit. A gathering of suitors. As the rains returned and the fields flourished once more, Adia became the center of attention. Her family, particularly her mother Nia, encouraged her to consider the many suitors who now came bearing gifts and promises. The family hut often bustled with visitors, farmers, tradesmen, and even young warriors, each eager to win Adia's favor. "Adia, my daughter," Nia said one evening, her hands busy weaving a basket. "This is your time. Choose wisely, for a strong alliance will bring honor to our family." Adia nodded, though her thoughts were far from alliances or honor. In the quiet of her heart, she wondered about Kofi. Where was he now? Had he given up on her? A lonely celebration. The village announced a festival to mark the end of the drought. It was to be a grand affair with feast, music, and dances. Chief Tembo himself proclaimed that this celebration would remind the villagers of their resilience and unity. Adia prepared for the festival with mixed feelings. Her younger sisters, giddy with excitement, teased her as they helped braid her hair. "Adia, you'll have every man in Kivoli asking for your hand by the night's end," said Zoe, her youngest sister. "Maybe even the chief's son from the neighboring village," added Amora, her second sister, with a sly grin. Adia laughed softly, but her heart remained guarded. She had spent so long yearning for validation that now, standing in its light, she felt strangely hollow. The return of a familiar tune. The festival was everything the villagers had hoped for. Drums pounded, voices sang, and the air was thick with the aroma of roasted meats and sweet fruits. Adia moved through the crowd, her smile practiced and graceful. Suitors approached her with practiced charm, offering her trinkets and compliments. But then, amidst the cacophony, a familiar sound pierced the air, a soft, lilting melody played on a flute. Adia froze. The tune was unmistakable, weaving through the noise like a whisper meant only for her. She turned, her eyes scanning the crowd, but the musician was nowhere to be seen. Her heart pounded as she excused herself from her companions and followed the sound. It led her to the edge of the festival grounds, where the lights of the village faded into the darkness of the surrounding hills. There, in the shadows, stood Kofi, his flute resting at his side. A long-awaited reunion. "Kofi," Adia whispered, her voice trembling. "You've returned." Kofi stepped forward, his eyes meeting hers. "I never truly left, Adia," he said. "I waited for the rains, for the borders to open, for a chance to find you again." Adia's heart swelled with emotion, but her mind raced with doubts. She thought of the life she had built in his absence, the attention she now received, and the suitors vying for her hand. "Why did you come back?" she asked, her tone guarded. "To remind you of who you are," Kofi replied. "Not the person the villagers now see, but the woman I fell in love with, the one who dances beneath the stars and sings with her soul." Adia looked away, her emotions a turbulent storm. She wanted to embrace him, to tell him how much she had missed him, but fear held her back. What if she wasn't the same woman he had loved? What if the changes in her life had created a chasm too wide to bridge? A test of the heart. Kofi seemed to sense her hesitation. "Adia," he said gently, "I will not ask for your answer tonight. But if your heart still remembers our song, you will find me where the moonlight touches the hills." With that, he turned and disappeared into the darkness, leaving Adia alone with her thoughts. The festival continued behind her, but the noise felt distant, as though it belonged to another world. She returned to her family's hut, her mind a whirlwind of questions and possibilities. That night, as she lay on her mat, Adia thought of the life she could have with Kofi, simple yet filled with the kind of love that transcended appearances and expectations. But she also thought of the life she now had, one that offered her status, security, and the approval she had craved for so long. The dawn of decision. When dawn broke, Adia knew she had to make a choice. Her heart and mind were at war, each pulling her in a different direction. She dressed carefully, her movements slow and deliberate. As the sun climbed higher, casting its golden light over the valley, she stepped outside, unsure of what the day would bring. Years passed, and Adia's life as the wife of the wealthy merchant Jabari seemed perfect on the surface. Their home was filled with luxuries, and her beauty continued to captivate those around her. Yet, the laughter that once danced in her voice had grown faint. Her heart, once vibrant with love and music, now felt like an empty drum, hollow and aching. A new festival. One evening, Jabari announced his plans to host a grand festival in Kivili. It was to be the most extravagant celebration the village had ever seen, with performers, traders, and guests arriving from far and wide. Adia, though weary, helped with the preparations, hoping the festival might bring a spark of joy back into her life. The night of the festival was a dazzling spectacle. Lanterns lit up the village square, music filled the air, and the scent of roasted meats and sweet fruits wafted through the crowd. Adia moved among the guests, her presence commanding admiration, but her heart remained heavy. A familiar tune. As the festivities reached their peak, a flute melody rose above the noise. The tune was hauntingly familiar, pulling at the strings of Adia's soul. She turned toward the sound and spotted a lone figure near the edge of the square. It was Kofi. His flute sang of love, loss, and longing, weaving a story that only Adia could truly understand. Tears welled in her eyes as memories flooded back nights under the stars, shared laughter, and the freedom she once felt in his presence. Unable to resist, she made her way toward him, her steps hesitant but determined. The crowd parted as she approached, their murmurs fading into silence. When she reached him, Kofi lowered his flute and looked at her with a mixture of sadness and hope. "Adia," he said softly, "your heart still dances to the same song." The moment of truth. Adia's voice trembled as she spoke. "Kofi, I've made mistakes. I chose a path that promised happiness but left me empty. Can you ever forgive me?" Kofi's eyes searched hers, his expression unreadable. "Forgiveness is not mine to grant, Adia. What matters is whether you can forgive yourself and find the courage to reclaim your true self." His words struck deep, and Adia realized that her regrets had been chains of her own making. She had spent years yearning for the love she once had, but the truth was clear: it was not too late to make a change. A new beginning. That night, Adia made a bold decision. She left the festival with Kofi, choosing to leave behind the life of wealth and emptiness. Together, they ventured into the wilderness, where they could live free from the judgments and expectations of others. Their journey was not without challenges, but their love gave them strength. Adia rediscovered the joy of dancing under the stars, this time with Kofi's flute as her constant companion. Their music echoed through the valleys, a testament to the power of love, forgiveness, and self-worth. A legacy of love. Adia and Kofi's story became a legend in Kivuli. Villagers spoke of the woman who found the courage to follow her heart and the musician whose love never wavered. Their tale inspired others to look beyond appearances and embrace the beauty within. As the years went by, Adia and Kofi built a life filled with music, laughter, and a love that endured. They taught their children the value of kindness, resilience, and the importance of staying true to oneself. Though Adia's time on earth eventually came to an end, her spirit lived on in the songs she and Kofi had created together. To this day, when the wind whispers through the hills of Kivuli, some say it carries the melody of their love, a reminder that the heart's true song can never be silenced. Moral of the story: true happiness comes from embracing who you are and following the path that speaks to your soul. Love that sees beyond the surface is a gift worth fighting for, no matter the cost.